All right, everybody. Welcome to Podcast PD. This is the part of the show that doesn't make it into the podcast because this is the YouTube part. So AJ and I are excited to be back. This is the third month of the new monthly format, right, my friend?
Third month sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, January, February. Here's March. Very excited for our April episode. But before we get to that, we are very excited for this episode. So I'm going to hit the
Record
intro,
There you go.
and we're going to do episode 126.
7.
No, this is it? Are you sure?
I got 127 in the show notes.
Time out. Hold on. PodcastPD.com. This is episode 126.
Oh, show notes say 127. Just FYI.
Okay, well, let's change all the numbers.
Got it. Fixing it now. Do that thing. All right, you're quick. Look at you. You're quick. Right. You do it then.
I think that's good. All righty. Here we go.
Miss one.
Let's see. Mel A is checking in.
Hey.
AJ, you still have your balloons up. Hey,
The kids like it.
Guess what, Mel? I still have that bed behind me. Ooh, look at that.
So weird.
Yeah, whatever. Shut up. Okay, here we go. Coming up on... Oh, yeah.
Doing great.
Coming up on episode 126 of Podcast PD, work-life balance is a challenge for many people, but it can be especially difficult for educators. Let's start the show. This is Podcast PD, the show that provides you with anytime, anywhere professional development. Our conversations and guests will provide you with the learning you might get in a faculty meeting or on a PD day. Except you're going to have more fun with AJ Bianco and me, Chris Nessie. Let's start the show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the podcast people. This is episode 126 of Podcast PD. My name is Chris Nessie, at Mr. Nessie on Twitter, and I am joined, as always, by the incomparable podcast paisano, AJ Bianco. What's up, buddy?
Yo. What's up, Christopher? What's going on out there? Podcast people. It's good to see, quote unquote, see everyone out there. Thank you for joining us.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. This is busy time. So like, man, this is busy time. Tis the season, as they say.
Tis the season for the testing?
No, dude. It's baseball season, dude.
Oh, okay.
It's baseball season. I got myself involved in 4 different teams. Kind of 4.
Wow, you're going to be playing a lot of baseball.
I wish. Coaching 10U rec, coaching 10U travel, and then assistant coaching the 8U rec and the 8U travel, because that's what we do.
Let's be honest. If you're a good assistant coach, you're pulling the strings anyway.
Not really pulling the strings, but definitely helping out because he's never done this before. So like, I'm like, sure, I'll give you my expertise over 3 years of coaching and dealing with nonsense.
A veteran manager. That's what you are.
That's it. And 1 title to show for it. So I'll take it.
That's more titles than our boy has. But anyway, that's a story for another podcast.
That's a different podcast.
Give a nice shout out to Mel A hanging out in the chat, and Stephanie Scrocky, one of our executive producers. So if you're listening to this on the podcast side, make sure you bookmark the last Sunday of the month to come out and check us out at podcastpd.com/live, which is how we're doing the show here in 2023. And we do want to thank you for making the show a part of your anytime, anywhere professional development. We're excited, as always, to be a part of the Education Podcast Network. A bunch of new shows on the network, so make sure you go and check out edupodcastnetwork.com. AJ, you have come through with another fantastic guest, and you have set this show up for another great conversation. Last month, we talked with Melissa Groff, and we talked about her story and kind of leaving education and kind of what that is doing for her. And tonight, we're talking with another friend of yours, Mr. Mark Torrie. So why don't you tell us about Mark and we'll bring him out.
Yeah, let me tell you a little about Mark Torrie real quick. So Mark and I were colleagues together. My previous job when I was in Harrington Park, New Jersey. Mark is a K-8 PE teacher. He's also a head varsity coach for soccer, and he is quite the coach. I'll be honest with you, motivator and skill all in one. Mark has done it. While in Harrington Park, Mark has totally taken a leadership role in the PE team. He is creating a lot of PD centered around exactly what we're talking about here with that work-life balance and that mental health and physical health and the physical well-being. But like the thing about Mark is he's the gentle leader that everybody needs, right? He is a quiet presence, but you feel his presence when he's in the room. So you would know exactly what to do. And Mark has a lot of eyes on him because I think he is very well respected. He's very trusted with the staff. And I think as both a parent and as a member of the faculty, people really come to Mark, talk about a lot of different things. So, I'm really proud to have Mark on the show. This is something we've been working on for quite some time. So let us introduce Mark Torrie to our program. Mark, what's going on, man?
Hello. How are we doing?
I'm doing well, bud. Doing well. It's great to have you here. And like I said, this is a long time coming. Mark and I have been in communication, and I'm really excited. And we'll talk about this throughout the episode. I'm really excited what Mark is doing with both mental and physical well-being for staff and for the I guess general public, we'll say. So let's get started. Let's go right into these questions because I think Mark's going to share a lot of information. It's going to get people thinking in the right sense.
All right. So first, let's hit the elephant in the room. We're going to do stereotypical podcast thing. Mark, you are not from America, so you've got this great accent. Where are you from?
So I am originally from Scotland, a small town, as well, we would say a wee town called Forfar, which is in the northeast. I came here in 2002 as a 21-year-old, so now this is my halfway point. I think the start of September this year is my halfway point. From then on, I'll have lived in the United States longer, but I know my accent's still strong, and I, even though actually when I was at William Patterson, they offered to give me classes to lose my accent, but I had to explain that it was one of the few things I had going for me. So I managed to persuade them not to put me in those classes, and here I am today. So
Mark, hearing that gives me like another reason to be dissatisfied with my alma mater. I am also a graduate of William Patterson.
Yeah.
So I apologize that they even make that an option.
Can I just say the one thing that Mark and I bonded over? I think Mark knows more American history as somebody who came to the country 22 years ago than somebody who's been here all their life. So, Mark, we were talking when we were colleagues, like focusing on like, do these kids know anything about like the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution? And Mark's like, well, I can recite it straight through. And like Mark is telling me history that I had no idea about. So it's amazing.
That's one of the benefits of being born abroad. You have to pass the citizenship test, and it's not multiple choice, it's open-ended, and I guess, but we've talked to it. I definitely do like history. It's really intriguing. It's interesting.
Definitely.
Well, hopefully at some point in this conversation, maybe we could talk about how you do some cross-curricular work between history and phys ed. I'm fascinated. But we are here to have Mark talk about work-life balance. And AJ, the three of us, we all know, just like anybody watching or listening, it goes without saying, it is tough to be a teacher and manage what you do in your classroom or as an administrator with your family and your friends and just this thing we call life. So, Mark, we'll start with you. What does work-life balance mean to you as an educator? And then AJ and I can chime in.
So obviously, as a phys ed teacher, that I teach in the town where I live, I only have like a 30-second walk to school. So, I do get there early. Because I like to get there and get my head straight and do some things that I want to do for my own health and wellness first. But when the school lets out, when at 3:15, 3:20, I'm back in the house. I'm around my kids, and I think that's been a huge benefit. And I do own a soccer coaching company, because who can live off a teacher's salary, especially early on in your teaching career in North Jersey? But I think the real thing I've learned over those years is to delegate more, to hire more people, do less of the work myself, do less of the running around myself. And I think that's probably been the biggest benefit for myself, because I'm able to do all the cooking. My wife's still working when I get home from school, and it helps with that balance. I get to spend time in the kitchen, which I love to do. I get to prepare healthier meals, and my kids benefit from it too. So it's pretty important to me. It's not something I would look to give up. I don't think there's any amount of money that I would be willing to accept to forgo that. I don't see the value in it.
Well, then you must have amazing kids, because there are days where I try and figure out what that number would be. No, I'm kidding.
No, I've got 3 boys, but my boys are a little bit older. So Campbell is 12, going on 13. Julian is 11, going on 12, and Ellis is going to be 9 in June. So they kind of take care of themselves. We don't do homework with them. We're not believers. I don't do homework for them. I don't ask them if they've done their homework. It's not. I think that they need to develop their own sort of responsibility for themselves, and so I'm not really involved in that stuff. But we're local, and I have time to put into their lives. So like AJ was talking about with coaching before, like I coach the kids teams, the soccer teams, and I'm able to do that. I'm able to give my time and give my energy and give the desire, and I'm happy to do it. So I'm in a privileged position for sure.
What about you, AJ? What does work-life balance mean to you?
Honestly, I find myself just shutting down at the end of the day. Kind of like what Mark is saying. I get home, the priority is the family. Whether it's coaching now or cooking meals or doing the laundry, whatever the case may be. But like shutting down, I think is more important now than it's ever been for me, which is tough, because then I go into work the next day knowing that I didn't finish the test that I had planned to do at night. I think that balance part is tough, because you can't balance work and life, right? I can't be on the baseball field with the kids and answering emails or taking phone calls or things like that. So again, it's like shutting down unless I know that there's something that pops up. So, as much as I say I turn off the phone and the email, I don't, because every now and then I might get, we have Gaggle. So for those who don't know what Gaggle is, our computer software is monitored by this system called Gaggle. And if something goes between students, whether it's thoughts of suicide, whether it's bad language, whether it's violence, whatever the case may be, if a kid sends an email or is Googling things, I get this notification. So the other day, I get a notification on my phone that says a Gaggle alert. And I look at it, right? Because that could be a serious thing, even though it's 10 o'clock at night. So I look at it, it's nothing major, and I can kind of put my phone down for a little bit. But that balance aspect is key, because there really is no way to actually balance the things any of us do when it comes to work and when it comes to play at home, because you're always going to be on in some regard.
AJ, I'm going to follow up with you. You're an administrator now. Mark and I are, classroom teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that the work-life balance you had achieved as a classroom teacher is different now as an administrator?
That's a great question. I'm sorry for the radio silence there. I don't know the answer to that, because when I was teaching, I found myself having lessons planned. As a teacher, my day was set. I knew exactly what I was going to do the next day, and nothing was going to stand in my way. In the role that I'm in now, I'm on the go. So it's a lot of management. It's a lot of putting out fires. It's a lot of doing that every day. So my calendar doesn't really do much for me unless I have like a set observation. So I might still have things to do that, I never thought I would have to do. So when I was in the classroom, I think when I came home, since lessons were planned, it would be all the fun stuff, all the podcasts I would do, the blogs I would write, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's very different in this situation.
I'm at a point where I'm fortunate. I even as a history teacher, I don't take work home with me,
Mm-hmm.
but I also have a lot of work that I do. So again, I'm not just in the classroom teaching history. I have the Rutgers gig, right? So I'm able to kind of use some time 1 or 2 days a week when I'm sitting there after high school ends before I go teach the college courses to grade DBQs or plan my lessons or get stuff ready for Google Classroom posting or get stuff written on my board. So I think for me, the balance comes from being able to effectively manage my time. So that way, when I do pull up in front of my house and my kids are on the lawn beating the crap out of each other, I can jump right in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
And
It's
I think that's the hard thing as educators. That's the hard thing is because it's not like you can utilize the time that you have when you're in the classroom. You're too busy. You're too
mm-hmm.
hands-on, right? You can't expect the students to be hands-on and minds-on if you're not, So that's the challenging part, right? That, and I was talking to it with a long-time educator buddy of mine last night. We were cooking together, and the solutions for that are probably like if you're to give teachers enough time during the day to prep and to plan and so on. You'd probably have to double your workforce, and you'd have to give the teachers half the class size, half the number of classes. And you really would expect them to take a massive deep dive into teaching, so obviously if you're going to assess or to monitor or as an administrator, if you're going to go and look at, some of these lessons would have to be much improved, but you'd have no excuse for it, but that's a massive financial undertaking. And it's not one that we're willing to take, right? So, as it stands right now, just trying to find balance, trying to find little things to do on a daily basis is going to be so important to get you through. Otherwise, it's a long journey.
And we would be doing a disservice because
Mm-hmm.
the perspective that the three of us have, we are three male educators, and I need to acknowledge that from having conversations with my own wife, who is also an educator, it is probably infinitely harder to be a woman and do this and create that balance. From talking to my own wife, she is, in addition to running her school library, she lives closer to home than I do. So she gets home before I do. She's got to be responsible for getting our kids to school. For her, she rearranges her schedule and she's able to do it where her lunch is the first part of her day. So she doesn't get lunch in the middle of the day when you're traditionally thinking you're getting lunch. I complain that my lunch is at 10:30. Her lunch is at 8:30, and her half hour is used to drive from her school to her mother's house to pick up our kids, get one to the bus stop, get one to school. She's doing a lot of the meal planning, the meal prep, managing the household, and I try to help as best I can, but I'm going to Rutgers. I'm taking the kid to this activity. So, we don't, as hard as we're complaining, there are people who can complain even a lot harder than this and have it even more difficult than even what we're saying, the three of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Mark, let's jump into this, right? This whole thing, like burnout, right? And I'm trying to figure out another word for it. Like burnout is extremely, I guess, relevant, right? Everybody's talking about burnout. Everybody's feeling it. Like March is the longest month, especially for us around this area. There's no breaks. It's very easy to kind of feel that burnout. So let me ask you, have you ever experienced this thing called burnout, or have you ever felt completely overwhelmed by work? And if you have, how has it impacted you as an educator or in your classroom or anything like that?
So many years ago, when my business was big, like we were running a lot of different soccer programs. We were here, then everywhere. I had coaches, so I had teaching, I had a full-time business. I had maybe 15 guys working for me. We were billing lots hours a week, stuff like I noticed that I would struggle to sleep, and I would also notice on my left eye I would twitch. And I was never focused. I was never present because I was getting emails and calls and stuff all day. I'm teaching and I don't have my cell phone on me. And I run in between classes to use the bathroom. I've got like 15 missed calls, and I'm like dealing with this stuff. And back then, I would say I didn't do a very good job of it at all. I think I was young enough and probably stupid enough. And you know, immigrants come with the ability to work long hours, and that's kind of what the deal is, right? So I just felt like this is what I have to do to better my situation to move, and I just kind of went through it from there. I don't do that now. Like I'm totally changed. My weight was heavy. I was heavier. I had stomach issues. I was probably my stomach was the worst thing that about it at the time. And so probably with that, my cortisol levels, my stress hormones were up. My insulin levels, fasting insulin levels must have been high. My energy levels are lower. So as a teacher myself, like, you know, I love Monday mornings. At that point in my career, I probably didn't. You know, I probably like, oh, not another week. But because my business is seasonal, I was just trying to get through especially the fall season, get through the fall season, get to the end of the fall season, get to Thanksgiving, and then I can breathe a little bit. But I'm not sure how much longer I could have done that for. You know, like I was kind of lucky enough that some things came along and changed that. But it was only really when I took a deep dive into my personal health and wellness. And as a guy with a degree in exercise and movement science, I should have known better, or I felt like I should have known better. But I went on this crazy like fat loss thing when it was in 2019. It was 4 years ago, and I dropped like 37 pounds in 40 days. And I just went on this deep dive from there. And that's kind of where all this has come through. So now like I have no stress. Like I do little things every day to help to improve my health, improve my wellness, because I understand that, you know, for young educators, the retirement age is getting older and older, you know, so they say that teaching's a young person's game. But what I found on my journey is that I don't think that we have to suffer how we do. I just think we just don't know the tools to which to use and embrace to help us as we move along. And that's kind of what I'm doing my second master's in nutrition now, and this is what I'm looking to take in with this pilot program, really in an interdisciplinary nature, and really tackle this head on, because the numbers are frightening. Our mental health, our physical health numbers in this country are frightening. 40% of our children are obese. 40% of adults are obese. 78% of adults, people 20 years and up, are overweight. I think it's 88% are metabolically unhealthy. And we suffer from all these autoimmune issues, you know, and I think teachers are a microcosm of society, and we're not immune to this, you know, and I think that there's a lot of things that are going on, especially things that are classified as upstairs with not only our staff, but with our students too, that can be improved through nutrition and some of the other things that go along with it, you know. So, but I'm in a far better spot now. I'm far more balanced now than I was.
You know, that some of that is kind of tough to swallow because, you know, like in our last episode, AJ, you know, she talked about how, you know, who takes care of the leaders, how, when we talked about how leaders get their PD, and just as educators, you know, where do we go for relief? Because, you know, 180 days a year, we're expected to show up, smile on our face, ready to be there for our kids. You know, as an administrator, you've got to be there, you know, to lead that school, smile on your face. And I don't know of any other profession that has to be at peak performance every minute of every day that you are on the clock.
Right.
And in a lot of places now, you better be on your game when you're off the clock, because God forbid you're photographed, videotaped, or seen doing something outside of your job. They're coming for you.
Absolutely.
So where do we get relief from? This is relief for me. Podcasting.
No, I mean this is a good place for you. But I you know, Mark, I was with you when you did that weight loss journey, that challenge, and like to a normal person, I'm just gonna say, like, watching you do it, I'm like, wow, discipline, I think is the thing that drove you, right? You had to be completely disciplined to do the things you were doing, because you changed your entire eating habits And like you hung out with us during lunch and you were just like, yeah, no, I'm not going to eat today. Maybe I'll have a bite in 2 days or something like that. And like,
Yeah.
and that was legit part of the program. And I think that discipline's there. So you said you have some things you do, small things you do every day. What are some of those things that you do now to put you in a strong mental space where you feel successful?
So I think like when you talk about discipline though, like the key factor to that is that your why has to be greater than the choices that you would otherwise make, you know. So for me, like I mentioned before about my stomach, you know, so I was in such a terrible position with my stomach that, you know, I just felt uncomfortable all the time, in pressure on my stomach, and just not good. I just did not feel well. Now it turns out like I have a peanut allergy. I'm like the oldest peanut allergy sufferer in the world. Everyone's like, "You're too old for that," and I'm like, "No, I'm not." But I am what I found along the way. Like I have lactose issues. You know, so there are foods that do agree with me. There's foods that don't agree with me. So, you know, like I stick to mainly whole foods. Right now I'm eating a lot of meat, high protein, very little carbohydrate, decent amount of fat. I stay away from milk or dairy products because it doesn't agree with me. I do source raw milk. I get it. It's actually illegal in New Jersey, but I do get it shipped. Gets delivered to my house, comes in from like Amish country, I think, which is, that has all the B vitamins. It has all the vitamins in it. You know, like once you pasteurize milk, it takes that all out. So I don't even know why we even have force it on kids. It makes no sense to me. Other than sugar, you know, that's all it's in it really. But so little things I do on a daily basis. So I don't eat processed food. If it's got an ingredient list, I will not eat it. So if an avocado has an avocado in it, tomato has a tomato, steak is beef. I don't eat like bagels that are highly processed foods that don't have any nutrients in them. They're just calories that, you know, that give you a little bit of energy and so on. I fast for I mix it up, but I fast most days. So like I'll fast from my evening meal tonight was at 6 o'clock. So I won't eat until probably lunch tomorrow. That helps with my mental clarity, but it also helps like when you eat a lot of sugar, your blood insulin levels go up. So your three hormones that cause weight gain is cortisol, which is your stress hormone, which to say our kids have the same as psychopaths in 1950. Today, you have insulin, which is secreted. It's a key that unlocks the cells to allow glucose into the cells, and estrogen. So those are the three that we have to control if you're going to control your weight, so on. So I don't spike my insulin levels, allow my insulin levels to come down. But what that does is it allows my brain to be clear. Brain's I think 2% your body weight. It takes up 20% of your energy though. So people that eat a lot of carbohydrate have what's called hyperinsulinemia, and the brain stops the glucose from coming in because it does a thing called glycation. So, and it damages the brain. So it doesn't allow it to come in, but then it doesn't feed your mitochondria. So now your powerhouse of your brain starts to shut down. And that's what we see in our students. That's what we see in our staff as well. So by eating a whole food based diet, then I kind of sidestep those issues. So I'm never not energetic. I've always got energy for everyone. But that wasn't always the case, you know, that I've learned that as I've gone here. Other things that I try and do is I exercise. I work out like 5 times a week. Actually strength training, weight training, and I walk a lot. So at Harrington Park, we instituted the Daily Mile last year, coming out of COVID. So our teachers take our kids out for 15 minutes a day. They run around with the kids, they walk with the kids, they get moving because it's important, because some of them probably it's the only exercise they get. And in addition, they get daylight as well. So their eyes are used to it, their circadian rhythms waking up. And these are little things that can help, especially in the morning, to wake you up so that you're not solely reliant on caffeine. and you're then able to give more of yourself throughout the day. These are little things I do on a daily basis that does definitely help. But I do have other things that I jotted down as well that I go into. You know, if you look at your teaching staff at the start of September, everyone's tan, everyone's in a good mood. And I believe that vitamin D plays a huge role in that. You know, when our vitamin D levels dip as we go through the winter here, and as we get into March, and our vitamin Ds are at the lowest levels, you know, as you can see, I took a wee bit of sun today. That's really when I think that we're, like, what does it say? The night's darkest before the dawn. That's really what I feel like we experience as teachers in March. And I think a lot of that has to do with the role vitamin D plays and where we live in the country, you know, and as it dips, you know, over the next 2 months, it'll start to build up again and people get outside, get more, and they're a bit more energized as they head in towards summer, you know. So I do think that's important for us as well.
Wow, that's actually, that's something to think about, you know, like that now I'm thinking about that correlation of like, is it the mentality of like, oh, we're getting out of school early, you know, or soon, I should say. Is it that mentality like, oh, school's ending? Or is it the fact that like, I'm outside more now, I'm taking in the sun. So maybe April, May, and June isn't like we see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's more like I'm back to where I should be, that I start the year feeling this way, you know, because you're definitely right. Like when it's, I guess, what we say, November, is that when the daylight savings time starts? Right. So from November until now, we're losing hours. We're stuck inside of a building. It's still dark when we're driving in, and it gets darker as we're leaving school. Right. And so like you're spending your time inside of a building, and that's just a miserable experience for anybody, you know, like we are experiencing a weird winter right now. Like we experience like some unusual temperatures, but like when the kids are outside during that time, I felt better, you know, during the winter months, just being outside for 2 hours. So that's really amazing, Mark. I wonder if that's the correlation now that we can look at it that way. The sun is out. We feel good. It's not just the end of the year.
I think that's right on point, because I'm at that point now where it's like, I can't wait to get home because the sun is out later. I can stay out later, you know, whether I'm, you know, throwing the football or going for a bike ride after dinner, you know, that sun is out there. And I guess with the end of the year kind of approaching, I'm looking forward to having more time for me, which I know I will spend outside and, you know, doing stuff and, you know, having more control. Whereas, you know, the regiment, you know, dictated what my day is supposed to be like, you know, from 6:40 to 2:30. I get that control back.
Right. And so I would give you, if I was to give you some advice on that as well, I would suggest like 2 to 3 times a week. Once you get home at 4 o'clock, I get so much sun in my backyard, take your shirt off. If you put shorts on, because the bigger the surface, yeah, there you go. The bigger the surface area exposed to the sun, the more vitamin D that you synthesize, and it's so vital.
I've got the surface area to synthesize.
Yeah. It's and it's important. I'll give you others. Don't wear sunglasses either. Sunglasses, you know, you take in sun through your eyes. It instructs the pituitary gland to secrete melanin to protect your skin. So when you wear sunglasses, it thinks it's darker out. So that's when you end up with worse sunburns. But these are little things like take 20, 30 minutes, 2-3 times a week from now until November. And it definitely helps. It definitely helps me that I'm still tan come November. And then even though normally we get away in February, but we weren't able to pull it off this year. And so it's been a long winter for me, but I'm looking forward to the change of the seasons. But these are things that are important. And not wearing sunscreen, don't put sunscreen. Our skin's our largest organ, and a lot of stuff in there is toxic to us, and it blocks the vitamin D production. So even though you're in the sun, you wear this, and your vitamin D levels are not going up. But again, vitamin D is so vital in so many functions within the body, and keeping healthy. It's just, I think, a little piece to the puzzle that goes a long way towards it, you know.
Mark, at one point with what we've been talking about, I wanted to ask you, with all this knowledge, why the hell are you teaching phys ed? But you need, like, this needs to be imparted on the young people. Like,
Right.
I am thankful to be a part of this conversation as an adult, but I can tell that with your not, and you're not looking at notes, right? You know this. You're getting
Yeah.
another master's in this, right?
Mhm.
So to know that you are sharing this with your students, that's going to go a long way to make a real difference. More so than
Sure.
world history or,
Mhm.
you know.
So it's interesting you bring that up because I also do a thing called grounding, which is also known as earthing. So, had you told me 5 years ago, Mark, this is what you're going to be doing, I'd be like, no way. But I went on such a journey. Again, my why is big enough that so grounding is you take your shoes. The invention of the rubber sole disconnected us from the earth. So the earth has a slightly negative charge. It's the same exact charge as in the human brain. So with the invention of the rubber sole, we became disconnected from the earth. When you take rubber soles off, your shoes off, and you walk and you're connected to the earth, so whether you're walking on concrete, dirt, grass, or sand, you're connected. There's a feeling that goes through your body, and electricity that runs through your body that helps to lower inflammation, helps to lower cortisol, which is maybe why, again, in the summertime, when you're walking barefoot around, you feel better. So I live, honestly, I live, a football field from the school. So my son is in 7th grade, was on the middle school soccer team. I go over to coach the high school team. We get done early. I come back, there's a game. So I walk over barefoot over to the school. And all the kids, the middle school kids, are like, Mr. Torrie, you're grounding again. I'm like, yeah. So I understand that they're not at their age, they're not able to put two and two together. But I do believe at some point they're going to face their own little challenges and they're going to remember back, oh, my old gym teacher used to do this sort of stuff and swore by it, and I'm going to give it a go and so on. But I think modeling definitely helps. And I think it's important. If you look at like I said, the numbers before, the health of our nation is not good. They're predicting by 2030, 50% of our population will be obese.
Mm.
And we have to do something, So I went to the state tech expo and then I presented down in Princeton at the Shape, New Jersey on my pilot program that I have going on. And we're going to hit it next year. We're building out the pilot program next year. So we're going to hit it in social studies, in nutrition. To hit nutrition and social studies is really interesting because Americans weren't really good at farming. They weren't. But because we have such a plethora of animals, game, and so on in this, we didn't need to be. Yet, even during the 1800s, we ate so much meat in the United States, but we had no heart disease. So what is it that changed come 1910 and moving on that changed that? And that's what we're going to focus on in social studies and have students think critically about that, because the reality is that the Northern Plains tribes in the late 1800s were still hunter-gatherer people. They weren't modern, they weren't modern tribes. They were hunter-gatherer, the Sioux and so on. I think it'll be interesting to see how we combine it and we put it all together. But I am excited for that. So.
Yeah, so Mark, why don't you tell us more about that? Tell us what you presented. Tell us what the overall goal of this program is for you and for schools. We'll start in New Jersey because that's where your focus is. But where do you want to get out of this?
So what I did, I had an idea that a CGM is a continuous glucose monitor. So most of the time, traditionally, they've been worn by type 1 diabetics. So my wife's a type 1 diabetic. She wears one just to make sure her blood sugar doesn't go too high, doesn't go too low. It sends off sensors. Okay, you need to take insulin or you need to eat and blah, blah, blah. More recently, they've been used for type 2 diabetics, but more recent than that, they've been used by healthy people to actually use as a gauge of what their blood sugar looks like and what foods cause what to their blood sugar. So what I did was I had the Home and School Association pay for 5 CGMs. So myself and 4 other staff members, a mix of male and female, wore them for 2 weeks, and we recorded the data. So we put it into like Google Slides, and we have a file of data that doesn't say who it is, but it shows what they ate or when they exercised, what the morning does to your blood sugar, and we're just monitoring blood sugar. So I don't believe you can stand in front of a room of students and tell them what to eat, because you have people that are, you might have vegans in your room, vegetarians, pescatarians. You might have, most of them will be omnivores, and you might have carnivores like myself. So, but what we can do is we can utilize data to encourage them to think critically, because if our students understand that most Western disease, if not all Western disease, comes from elevated blood glucose and hyperinsulinemia, high insulin levels, what are foods that cause that, and what are foods that don't cause that? What are foods that help keep our blood sugar lower and more manageable? And that's really where I've been. So for next year, the guidance department and tech, Miss J, are going to work on from the mental health aspect. There's a professor, Dr. Georgia EDE, that she was in charge of Harvard psychiatry, and she believes that nutrition is the key for all of this mental health and wellness. She gave up treating people with medication and really made dietary interventions up at Harvard. She was there for 7 years, and then when the presidency changed over, because they'd taken so much money from Big Sugar and so on, they were told you can only prescribe medicine. Mm-hmm. It's like, why would we do that? Look at the steps. She had so many professors and students, brilliant people coming in with, chronic fatigue, depressive disorders, mental health issues, so on, anxiety. And she made these huge steps. So she stepped back. She was like, I'm not going to do this. We're not going back. I'm not moving back. So they're going to focus on science. Will focus on the endocrine system and the role of food within the body. Maths are going to look at mapping and graphing. Social studies are going to look at the history of food, like seed oils. We could have a podcast on seed oils and the history of seed oils. And it's criminal what's been allowed to infiltrate our food system. And that's what social studies, and then health, in health class, we're going to look at, again, like nutrition, really focus on nutrition, nutritional choices, goal setting, and so on. So it'll be interesting to see how we get on here. But the staff are excited, and we are going to use the STGP process to build this out. So,
yeah, and Mark, I think it's a really good thing. I think right now, especially, a lot of our kids they're stationary. Right, they're sitting in front of video games when they get home. They're sitting in front of computers during the school day. There isn't a lot of opportunity for students to move around. There isn't really an opportunity for students to understand, the question of how we got to where we are. Right. So I think this is really good for them to have that interdisciplinary approach where they're looking at different things that they could do and ways that they can live their life healthier and become better people. This could push them to do the things that you're talking about, whether it's grounding, which is becoming more popular in the world of sports.
Yeah, the baseball player, right?
Yep, absolutely. It was Matt Carpenter. He played for the Yankees last year, went out there. And I saw it, and it's a real thing. And he wasn't just doing it to put on a show. Like every time he was in the outfield, he was grounding. And I think it's really telling to see like how his career. I don't know if it's a correlation, but his career exploded last year. After years before that, he kind of fell apart, right? But like this is something that we need for our kids, especially, so they understand like the things they're doing to themselves. That like, yes, they may enjoy video games, but man, being outside in the sun. Whether it's just kind of hanging out with your family or just staring at the sun for a little bit, like get out, go understand, go live your life. Like, I think this is a great time for this. And I told you this, we talked about this at the beginning. Like this is needed more now than it ever was before. And you see that, right? You're talking about it.
And the parent, like I'm going to run parent academies as well. But the real goal is to probably build a non-profit organization and look to take this to multiple districts, and really try and educate, get the parents involved as well. Because obviously with stuff like nutrition, the parents are doing the cooking at home. The kids are not going to the supermarket and buying. So we need to work hand in hand in a community-based program to affect change, and just to really you just want people to think critically, right? You want them to ask questions, because I do believe we're N equals one. Like, I'm Scottish, I'm from Scotland, my parents are from Scotland, we're from the same valley, we're farmers. So it's easy for me to figure out what did we eat 100 years ago prior to seed oils and all that coming in. That Angus cows are from Angus, where I'm from. So salmon, haddock, cod, root vegetables such as potatoes, turnips, and that's probably what I should eat. Non-processed food. Like if you're Italian, if you're 100%, I think when you're mixed, I think that's when it's a little bit more challenging. So if your mum was French and your dad's Colombian, there are probably things that agree with you and things that don't, but it's n equals one, right? That's what I want everyone to take. We're our own experiment. We're all different. So there's might be foods that agree with you that don't agree with me. And you need to go on this journey for yourself, but you can only do that if you've developed critical thinking skills and curiosity to go down that rabbit hole, right? So I think that's kind of where I'm going with it from there.
Mark, this has been a fantastic, eye-opening conversation. As the 1/3 of this broadcast that is obese and needs to work on himself a little bit more, I have learned something tonight. I had not heard of the term grounding. The closest thing for me that I was familiar with, again, because of my wife, which is so many things in my life, would be barefoot running and that whole idea of, the shoeless shoe. So
Right.
I had that little bit of framework for me. But as I sit here thinking about what you've shared, I'm like, I do like to be outside without my shoes on. I love the feel of the grass. I hate the sand, but I guess it's good to go to the beach and let the sand
Right.
hit my feet. So I really appreciate everything that you have shared and everything that you've talked about tonight. And, I don't often go back and re-listen to these for the content. I do quality control, but I'm going to listen to this again because you shared so many wonderful things. And I hope that you who's listening or watching also, if you were taking notes, awesome. If not, go back and listen. But Mark, as we move forward, how can people connect with you, and what are some resources that people can turn to continue to learn about a lot of these things that you've shared tonight?
So I'm on social media. I did a podcast. I did we did some personal development days, which was rare because normally it's professional development. But after COVID, it was like 1 year we did a lot of personal development, and I did a seminar on fasting and just the benefit of fasting and what it really is and what it's not. It's not starvation. And it was I think there was 75 women in it, and it was an hour long. I was on there for about an hour and 45 minutes answering questions and so on. But like to implement little things, like Chris, I'd say you, like as a history teacher, in May, take your classes outside, have them all go barefoot. Look at the invention of the rubber. You're a history teacher. Look at the invention of the rubber sole and look what it actually meant, or what did it really do? What did it really mean for us, right? So obviously it made walking and running and all that easier, but at the same time, everything action has a reaction, right? And what are the consequences of that as they head in towards? Because I think little things like this are important. That I think that it definitely can help our students. But I had one of the social study teachers at Ultapan. She went out and she did it, and she was like, "Wow, I would never have thought of doing this." But I use it as the cool down for the high school boys. So at the end of our soccer sessions, all right, boys, go grounding, and they just walk barefoot and talk to each other. So I see them have far more conversations together than what they normally would, get their stuff and leave and blah, blah, blah. And now they're spending time, they're reducing their inflammation in their body. They're taking that time. I'm building in that personal time that it's okay to take time. I think sometimes as adults and professionals, like we think it's selfish if we go to the gym because I think it's probably the most selfless thing you can do. But we're so worried about the time between our professional responsibilities and our personal responsibilities as well that to have people tell you it's okay it is a big part of it. That it's not perfection we're after, it's curiosity that drives these little journeys that we're on, and I think that's the important part. I'm not sure if you want me to create. I can create like resources. I have resources, a slide I can create for you and send to you, so that especially because women, I'll be honest with you, it's so much easier for men to lose weight than it is for females. Last Friday, I did a female nutrition session, and all based around the cycle, which we never teach girls. We teach health class, we teach nutrition in high school 1 year, few weeks of 1 year, boys and girls together. Yet we're on completely different pages. So women should know about the cycle and when's it better to train strength, when's it better to which part of the month is more risky for injury, which part of the month do they burn fat, which part of the month do they burn sugar, which part of the month do they actually need more calories, and so on. Like we just don't teach girls this, so we almost set them up for failure, and then we blame them when things go awry. We point the finger of blame at them, and they lack discipline or they lack this and that. But I think that the problem's rooted more in the fact that we haven't exposed especially young women to these ideas and the science behind it as well, which I think can help them. But like I said, I have a website, I have a Weebly that I can share with you. And I have there's one of my presentations is on there. But yeah, look, whatever you need from me, I can send over and you can share it out and so on. But I am on Instagram and Twitter as well.
Perfect. That will all be in our show notes out at podcastpd.com/126. And you'll be able to connect with Mark on social media, and we'll have a link to his website, which will give you access to all of the resources that he is talking about. My last question, half sarcasm, half I'm curious, because one of my best friends at the school I work at, he's also the boys' varsity soccer coach. And when I go to him and talk to him about grounding, our field is artificial turf. So is the grounding effective on artificial turf?
No, so the rubber in the turf is disconnected.
Right. Okay. All right. I will not tell him that idea then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we walk off if we do train on the turf or if we play on the turf. Sometimes we get there early and there's grass around. We go sit on the grass barefoot. It goes through your hands and your feet. So even if you're outside, if you're an English teacher, one of the English teachers taking the kids outside a lot to read, but I'm like, get the shoes off, have them take their shoes off. And he's like, really? Like, I'm like, look, you're outside anyway. Like, just honestly, they'll start to get into it and they'll start to, these are things that they'll take home to their parents that will it invoke discussion maybe, but yeah, you can't do it on the rubber. The rubber is what's disconnected us from the earth. So,
all right, more lessons learned. AJ, anything else?
No, I'm like I said, I've known Mark now for going on almost 10 years, 7 years,
probably,
yeah. And I continue to be impressed by everything he's doing. Like I've seen tremendous growth in Mark, and I'm glad he was here, and I'm glad he's sharing this information. I really hope that the listener out there will reach out if it's something that you are interested in. Like, look, we wanted to talk about, that idea of self-care, and we've talked about some other things in other episodes about what you can do to like just unwind. This is beyond that. Like it says beyond the classroom. This is totally beyond what you're looking at for self-care. This is looking at who you are as an individual and your health going forward. Because if as Mark said, over the time, we're all going to fall apart as a society, right? So we need to start taking care of ourselves better now. And if the retirement age is getting later and later, and we're going longer and longer in this profession, we need that. So I'm going to say, reach out to Mark and start learning the things that he can offer, because I think he can really change your outlook in your classroom and what you can do as a person as well.
And I would say this is also bigger than somebody who feels that unwinding is just looking forward to happy hour on a Friday or, after a department meeting. So this is bigger stuff. So regardless of the fact that you're a teacher, maybe share this with somebody who who works in another profession, because certainly nutrition is important to all of us, and everything that Mark talked about, and I don't mean to talk about you like you're not here, but everything he talked about is valuable for any human being, anywhere, any walk of life.
Perfect. Well said.
I try.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
Of course, man. Love it.
All right. Real quick before we get out of here, we do want to thank our executive producers, and those fine people are Holly Landez, Sandy Hartman, and Stephanie Scrocky. If you're interested in becoming an executive producer of the show, visit us at podcastpd.com/executive producer. And if you want to give back to the podcast based on the content we're able to put together for you, we would certainly appreciate that. And all the information is out at podcastpd.com/executive producer. AJ, have you
Yo,
listened to any podcasts recently?
I have. I knew you were going
All
to ask me
right.
this.
You are prepared. All right. Go ahead.
All
Share
right.
it.
So I'm going to throw one out there, and I don't know if I spoke about this one or not. I'm fairly new to this podcast, although the podcast itself has been going on for, I believe, 11,000 episodes. No joke. So there's a podcast called the Success Hotline with Dr. Rob Gilbert, right? And Dr. Gilbert is a college professor in Montclair, and he has a call-in line, right, where you listen to his message of the day. I'm going to give you the phone number because this is legit. I've tried it, right? So he records about a 3-minute motivational message, and you call the number and you can hear the message. So the number is, get a pen or pencil, 973-743-4690. Right. So you can call that, you hear the motivational message, and then you can actually leave a message at the end of it. Right. But this podcast is the motivational message. So 11,000 episodes that he's been doing this. I think they're under 5 minutes. I think it's like 3 to 5 minutes.
So the phone number is for people who don't understand what a podcast is.
No, the phone number was the original thing.
Okay.
But they turned it into a podcast.
Perfect. That scratches my itches.
Right. But you got to be honest. When you listen to it, you're like, I should really call this one day.
Really?
Yeah, you really should. Yeah. I would play it on the air, but like, what if like something happens? I don't know. So.
Well, let me, through the magic of technology, this is called the Success Hotline, you said?
Success Hotline with Dr. Rob Gilbert.
Well, let's pop
You're
that
not
up on the
doing
old
this.
screen here.
Come on.
The Success
gonna-
Hotline, 973-743-4690. I will check this out. So it comes out every day?
Every day. I don't know the times though. He's not specific on that. So I don't know if it's like a morning thing and a night thing. So
Well,
try it.
can you really put a timestamp on success?
Not for the hotline, I guess.
Not for the hotline. And the podcast that I will share, we are big fans of Simon Sinek here on the
I've heard of him.
podcast. He has his A Bit of Optimism podcast, and I really enjoyed his March 14th episode, which was titled Down a Rabbit Hole with Seth Godin. So Simon Sinek, Seth Godin, two friends, two amazing thinkers here in the 20th and 21st centuries. So check out that episode. I will include a link to it in the show notes. Now, Mark, you said you wanted to talk about the 26-second podcast you listen to each day when you walk to work.
Get out of here. Mark's going to make you a 26-second podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
26 seconds of grounding. Let's go. Motivational
Wow.
thoughts with Mark.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not even sure it is 26 seconds, to be honest with you. You know, it's certainly close.
It can't be. I've been to your house
Close.
before. Yeah.
Part of me feels like you saying you walk to work means it's a full-out sprint from door to door.
Nah, I tell you that helps as well though. With like nutrition, that I walk home and make my own lunch, so I'm never caught short and so on and so forth. These little things help, you know. Like, but the fact that I'm home, I don't spend a lot of time commuting. I feel like there's a lot of value in that I'm just not willing to give up, you know. So I don't want to run around like a headless chicken. I did that for long enough when I first came here. So,
All right. Well, Mark, thank you for being here on Podcast PD. AJ, start to put a bow on this episode.
Put a bow on this episode. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. This is a wonderful conversation. And if you have anything that you'd like to share, if you have thoughts and you want to talk about that conversation, you want to learn, like, please let us know. Feedback at podcastpd.com. Or if you'd like to send a voice message. What do you want to do here, Chris? Voice message? Whatever.
Send a voice message.
Podcastpd.com/feedback. Send a message. Send us your feedback. Let us know what you're thinking. And join us on the last Sunday of the month as we have our podcast episodes.
Can I tease the next episode?
Go ahead. You love
All
this.
right.
I'm excited
So
for it.
on Sunday, April 30th, 2023, we are going to have with us Gary Arndt, who is the host of Everything Everywhere Daily, which is a podcast that I recently got into listening to. And I've been into some podcasty stuff with Gary, and Gary's going to be a guest because his podcast is great for the classroom. So a little bit of a different take from a non-traditional education provider, because his podcast is amazing. So you've got a month to start to listen to some episodes, and we're going to have Gary with us on April 30th for episode 127.
127.
Yeah, 127.
No, I'm saying this is not 127.
This is not.
No.
This is 126.
This is
We established that.
Yes, we did. I had to learn.
All right. Thanks for checking us out in the chat on the live stream. And if you're listening on the podcast side and you did not know, come out 9 o'clock, April 30th, 2023, podcastpd.com/live. Thank you, Podcast Paisano. Thank you to Mr. Mark Torrie for joining us, and we will see you next time. Wave goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.